Christian parenting.
As we continue our Family on Mission series, we're going to talk about the ministry of hospitality with author of The Living Table, Abby Turner.
Start with, a frozen meal that you top with some fresh veggies or some, it's so simple. And that's what I would want these, overwhelmed families and mothers to hear, is that it does not have to start with the Thanksgiving or the Christmas meal. It can start small with your family. And then as you feel more confident, the Lord will open up very intentional moments for you to invite people in.
Hey, my name is Jay Holland, and this is Let's Parent on Purpose. It's a podcast to help you thrive and not just survive your parenting years. Each week, I'll bring you an insight or an interview that will help strengthen your marriage, your family, or your personal walk with Jesus. And if you find it helpful, I encourage you to subscribe, share it with your friends, and you're welcome to go to letsparentonpurpose.com to find all kinds of past articles, issues, and resources to help your family. I hope you're enjoying this Family on Mission series as much as I've enjoyed recording it. Each one of these conversations helps excite me about all of the different ways that a family can serve the kingdom of God. I don't take it as a guilt complex of, here are all the ways that we're messing up, but more just kind of illuminating all of the different ways that the Lord has given us to serve. And we understand that not every person can do every one of these. Not every family can do most of these, but even in hearing these stories, something's going to light bulb, something's going to come out that you know that you can do. And I think that today's conversation is going to be one of those that on some level is going to be really helpful for every family, whatever your state. I have a really enjoyable conversation today with Abby Turner. Abby is the food blogger and writer behind A Tabletop Affair. She's made it her mission to help women toss aside the pressures of a Pinterest perfect dinner party in exchange for meaningful and simple gatherings that feature easy and delicious dishes, allowing hostesses to shift their focus from the food and party preparations to communing with people who are present. Abby's written a really beautiful cookbook called The Living Table, Recipes and Devotions for Everyday Get-Togethers. Hey, if you've been around this podcast for all 230 plus episodes, you know that I've never interviewed somebody because they wrote a cookbook. But this was really special. It was very Jesus-centered. And also, I just loved how it was grouped by the occasion instead of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so it really did have some great ideas for it. And mostly, I just appreciated Abby's heart. We talked today in our conversation about how her passion for hospitality started actually as a single young lady. And then we talk about how we can involve our family in getting a mindset for hospitality and how it doesn't have to be overwhelming. As a matter of fact, the less picture perfect your house is, probably the more meaningful the ministry is going to be. We brainstorm how to get your children involved in it. And then Abby actually shares a recipe that I want to go home and cook tonight for chicken pesto, a really easy 30-minute chicken pesto recipe. All of this is done, and let me just tell you, I don't get a commission off of the people that I interview. I don't interview them unless I think that it's something worthy and worthwhile. And this really is. Hospitality has a heart of Jesus in it, and hospitality is one of the ways I think that Jesus reached those around him. He discipled people around the table, and we can do that as well. So if you want the links to Abby's stuff, you can find it in the show notes, but really the easiest way is to just sign up for my Things for Thursday email. You do that by texting the word THINGS, THINGS, to 66866. That's THINGS to 66866. And when the email comes out, the link to this week's episode will also have links to Abby's Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, her blog, and the Living Table cookbook. It's a great book, great devotional book for you as well. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Abby. Abby, it is so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining Let's Parent on Purpose today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and chat.
Yeah, what a great timing, because I had been praying and planning this series on family on mission, and then came across your book, which just the Living Table, which just seems to fit so well with it. So we're gonna have a great conversation on hospitality and the ministry of hospitality. But as I was reading about you, you were telling a story of how you kind of really fell in love with cooking and hospitality. We have a number of single listeners to our podcast, and I
Yeah.
thought, man, what a great place to start. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, so I worked in college athletics for a brief period of time, 4 or 5 years, and in college athletics, you move around a whole lot. So I was constantly having to rebuild community. I would live in a place for a year. I would find a friend. I would build my tribe, and then I'd have to move and I'd have to do it all over again. And that can get really exhausting and tiring. And in college athletics, you're working 9 to 5 and you have nights and weekends that are consumed with games and events. And so I was really finding myself in a place where I was struggling maintaining friendships or relationships. I was struggling being connected in a church. It was really challenging to even plug into my like actual community organizations in the town where I was at. And so I remember being super lonely. And it wasn't, I don't, I think that singleness is marked by this lonely stereotype where, the more that I have explored loneliness, really everyone in life can be lonely,
Mhm.
whether you have, you're single or you have 4 kids or you are just married, like you can go through bouts of loneliness. And so the single people out there, I hear you. I'm there with you. I'm sitting in it with you. But if you're married and you have kids and all of that, I also want to recognize that loneliness sits there as well, and you can find yourself in those spaces. But I was talking to my mom one night. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and I did have friends, but we weren't hanging out. We weren't really living life together. So I guess you would call those people more like acquaintances. But my mom said, cook something and bring people over your house. And I grew up in a big family. Hospitality, bringing people over around the table was just something we did. I mean, I remember having breakfast at the table, which is like a bit of a figment of people's imaginations now. It's like we don't have time for breakfast at a table in the morning. But that's just how I grew up. But that did not carry over into college or into my adult life. And so I was talking to my mom, and she said, you need to cook and invite somebody over. At that point, I was living in like a 600 square foot apartment, a two-top table. It was very small. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to cook. Maybe I'll just order pizza. And my mom was like, no, there's something about a home cooked meal. So I tried Pinterest, and, we can get so overwhelmed with Pinterest and Instagram. And that's one thing that I talk about in my cookbook. But I found this cheesy tortellini recipe. I kind of adapted it because I thought that I was good like that. I was not. And it was so bad. It was like the worst meal. Tortellini, if you have never eaten it or you are unaware, it has cheese on the inside. So it really just needs a sauce on the outside, pesto, Alfredo, something like that. And so it was just cheese galore and pasta, like a mac and cheese, I guess, but it was so bad. But she asked to come back. So one dinner turned into another dinner with more people. I think at one point I had 8 people in my tiny little apartment. We were sitting on the floor, we were sitting on the couch, we were sitting at the table, and it turned into a girls Bible study for people that were in the same place as me, that we just worked nonstop, and we just found little moments of life to kind of connect with Jesus. And so it really, one dinner that was so bad turned into relationships that I'll treasure now. For I don't live in Birmingham anymore, but I'll treasure forever. And it's that moment that kind of marked, I guess, the trajectory of the next 10 years of my life, catching up to where I am now, about how important the table is, how important the community aspect is, and how our culture and how the enemy and how we can just get so wrapped up in Instagram worthy and Pinterest perfect, and I'm not good enough to be Martha Stewart, or I can't cook like that, or I don't know what to cook. Nobody wants to come to my house. All of those are lies that our culture wants to tell us and wants us to believe, and it's keeping us from building that true community and that true intimacy that I believe Jesus wants us to have around the table.
Man, that's so good to hear. And I think the way that it happened in your life was so helpful because it seems like the older we get and the more established our household gets, the bigger the deal something feels to us. And so it's not just I need to try to cook the right food, but it's I've got to have everything in my house in order. Like
Yeah.
everything has to be put away, everything has to be picture perfect, and like seriously, two things. Number one, if somebody is actually coming over judging, every aspect of your house, you can take that one of two ways. One is their character needs to be developed a little bit more, and that's not your problem. Or number two, maybe you just made them feel better about their life because yours isn't all in order.
That's right. Yeah, I will say that right on that point, I have had people in my house and my house has been pristine. I live alone and two dogs. And so it's really easy for my house to look like just clean. I can just, I don't have kids running around. I get it. But I cook a lot. So my sink and my kitchen are always just in disarray. But when my kitchen and my sink, the dishes are put away, people there's one question that they always ask: do you have a coaster? I
Huh.
think it's so funny that when my house looks perfect, they're like, "Oh, I need a coaster for this. I need to like make sure I don't mess anything up." But when I have dirty dishes in the sink, or when I have boxes on the floor, or my laundry's not put up, or whatever it is, people don't ask for coasters. They just put their drinks wherever
Interesting.
and I think that that's such a really good just small example of our mindset when we walk into when we walk into somebody's home. Just this is how they live life. It kind of opens us up to be more vulnerable with them and to meet them where they are, and to know, look, I'm not judging. They want me to meet them where they are. Well, I want them to meet me where I am.
Absolutely.
And so I think that it's a really good mindset to have of like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Almost sometimes the imperfect provides the opportunity for like this intimacy that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Man, I think there's such a correlation to the way that church has evolved in the United States to what you're saying. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm a full-time pastor, and so we spend time evaluating our services every week, and we're trying to do things to make it as excellent as we possibly can. But this constant awareness that the more perfect the presentation is on Sunday morning, the more difficult it is for people to actually relate. Now, they may enjoy the experience a lot,
Right.
but everything being slick, everything going according to plan, everything being flawless, every speaker that gets up being in perfect tune and not umming and not seeming to actually be a human being, it makes it harder for people to open up about the realities of what they're struggling
Yeah.
through in life. And so I love, first off, that's just, if any pastors are listening, remember that the more
Yeah.
perfect your Sunday morning appears, probably the more difficult it is for your people to open up. But I love when you take that into the home. Your home is not a display piece for people. It's not a museum. It's a home, and I love. One of the things that I think of is somebody said before. Jesus spent his 3 years of ministry eating and drinking people into the kingdom of God,
That's right.
and how many
Love that.
conversations happen not just because they ate a meal, but because, and it was culturally, but they were reclining around the table. So it was the fact that they felt comfortable, they felt at ease and at home, and they could linger, that the conversations will go places that you would never dream they would go otherwise. And that's a wonderful thing.
Well, and I write in the book that it is not about perfection, it's about connection. And I think that that's, we always go back when we talk about hospitality, we always go back to this Mary and Martha story. And I just want to stop there and say, like, that is the perfect example. Jesus looked at Martha and said, it is not about perfection. It is about connecting with each other. It is about, like, don't worry yourself. Yes, it has to be prepared. And I think that you can even go into the story of Jesus and Peter walking in to Peter's mother-in-law's house, and she's sick in the back, and Jesus, like this perfect Advil, like comes back and says, "Hey, you're healed." And scripture says she immediately starts serving. Well, she couldn't have immediately started serving them if she hadn't been prepared to be in a posture of obedience to like serve people.
Mm,
And so I love that thought of where the difference between hosting and hospitality. Hosting is like impressing.
mm,
Hosting is this mentality of my house is a museum, or I do want people to be impressed. And there's a pride aspect to that, where hospitality is all about the heart. It's all about connecting with people and serving people and loving them through service. And I truly believe, like you said, Jesus did his ministry around tables and food. I believe 100% was Jesus's love language. And I think that we're going to get to heaven and the food is just going to be so wonderful. But when we are trying to get people to the table, food is that just natural conduit to get us there. And then the conversation just comes and flows out of that. But food gets us to the table.
I love that. I love that. How does somebody, I'm thinking right now of a mom, and she's got 2 or 3 little ones running around at home, and she has lost her sense of who she is. And I know on one sense you could say, well, you're building human beings, and that's the most important thing you can do in your life. But it can become a very
Mhm.
self-absorbing time, because
Yeah.
you kind of lose connection with the rest of the world during that time, and you're always afraid, and you're running by the seat of your pants. And now we're saying you could have an incredible blessing in a ministry through hospitality. How does somebody make that shift of, okay, I feel overwhelmed already as I am. How do I get myself, and then how do I get my family in the mindset of hospitality when that's our case?
Yeah, I think that it starts in the home, and it starts just in our daily practice and the daily mindset. I think that getting to the table with your family is one of the most important things that you can do. Even if you're not, hosting a magnificent Friendsgiving or a big dinner on a Tuesday night or whatever the situation, you are cultivating the minds of your kids and of your family, and you're building relationships. And there's so much psychology out there that says that, eating dinner, eating lunch, eating breakfast around the table, and preparing that meal in the home, not ordering out, not doing fast food, but actually preparing that meal in the home, develops so much in children that then it becomes just
Hmm.
routine. It becomes more of a habit. It becomes more easy. I would also say lean into your grocery stores. That's one thing that I really tried hard in the cookbook to do, is that the recipes are not, they don't take a long time. They are 30 minutes, usually one pot. I tried to really keep them one pot, really easy cleanup. And they usually start with something store bought. For example, there's a no bake cheesecake. The reason it's no bake cheesecake is because you buy the cheesecake at the
Huh.
store. And so it's like you're starting with some elements that Walmart or Kroger or Publix or you name your grocery store have already prepared for you, and you're just topping it with
I
something.
like
You're
that.
adding something to it to make it feel more homemade, to make it feel like you did something in the kitchen, and then you're proud of that. Then you want to do the next step. Then you want to grow your ability. And so much of what we see in our culture is we have to start with the sourdough bread.
Mm.
And it's like, no, you don't have to start there. Start with, a frozen meal that you top with some fresh veggies or some, it's so simple. And that's what I would want these, overwhelmed, families and mothers to hear, is that it does not have to start with the Thanksgiving or the Christmas meal. It can start small with your family, and then as you feel more confident, the Lord will open up very intentional moments for you to invite people in.
Yeah, and as you start with your family, especially as your kids get a little bit older, so post toddlers, once they start having, and if you live in a neighborhood, a real easy next step is, once you have established that you and your family eat around the table, let the neighbors' kids stay and eat. Many of them are not having dinner around the table, and just
Yeah.
them seeing what a family unit looks like, what conversation can look like, can go a long way. We've got a couple kids who
Yeah.
are now staples in our house. It's like, if they're there at dinner time, they're at the table, and they've been there long enough to where they have chores. If they get to be a part of
Yeah.
the process. So yeah, I
That's right.
love that, starting easy. How do we get our kids to see this as a family ministry? This is not just something that is put on mom for the most part, or sometimes put on mom and dad, or dad. But how would you suggest helping your children have their eyes open to, what, one of the ways that we can serve Jesus is by having people over? Which, number one, kids typically are really excited about that. Yeah, let's have people over. But how do you involve them in the process of making the meal, getting them involved, because it feels like that could be chaos.
Yeah, it can be. And I think you, again, start small, setting the table, making sure, hey, a lot of times our tables are filled with bills or purses or soccer shoes, or just let's clean up. Let's get the area ready. And I think that that prepares our heart. I mean, that's one of the things that when you are put in a place where, okay, I'm going to be ready to serve and ready to host people at the table has to be clean.
Hmm.
So that is part of the process. Have them do that once, once you have, your kids have learned that muscle, then bring them into, okay, now we can put ice and tea or water in the glasses, and then we can start working on, maybe the bread comes next, like then they start to kind of graduate to the bigger jobs. But if you go back to the table, I think that kids want to invite their friends to places where they feel safe, they're having fun, they enjoy themselves. And so the table doesn't need to be, I think I saw a statistic that said most family dinners range between 18 and
Hmm.
20 minutes. But really, for solid impact, they need to be between this like 35 and 42 minutes. And so that can be a long time at the dinner table, but just think about all the conversation you can have, the lessons you can learn, the stories you can hear, the memories that can be made when you sit down and say, okay, we're going to take 30 solid minutes and I'm going to talk to my 2-year-old at the table, or I'm going to talk to my 15-year-old at the table. They're going to, it's going to naturally be this fun environment where they're going to feel like, oh, well, I want, Joey to come over, or I want Sally to come over. And it's like, yes, that's what we need to be doing. We need to be teaching our kids at a very young age that the table is a place of connection. It's a place where there's no judgment. It's a place where you feel loved and seen and heard. And there are kids out there that don't
Hmm.
feel that currently. And it's identifying those kids and saying, okay, let's invite this kid over, and starting that process, changing that mentality, helping your kids see, oh, this is what the table's about.
Let's Parent on Purpose has always been about equipping moms and dads to build thriving families centered around the hope of the gospel. If you regularly listen to this podcast, you're actually among a community of parents that spans 68 countries, including many in the 1040 window, where there are few churches and limited access to the gospel. As the amount of content I produce over the years grows, so do the cost of maintaining, storing, and producing all of the different details that help make this show helpful. If God has put you in a place where you might be able to help a little bit and support this work, would you please consider going to letsparentonpurpose.com/support and either giving a one-time gift or becoming a regular supporter through Patreon? If you're not in a good place to support the show, that's fine. I pray you continue listening, growing, and sharing it with others. That's it. No hard push. Just a simple request that if you're able to and would like to, help share the load of the show at www.letsparentonpurpose.com/support. We have a practice of roses and thorns around our table that we do. It's just, as we're gathering together and everybody's kind of been in their different directions for the day. All right, what were your roses and thorns today? What were your high points and what were your low points? And sometimes
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't have thorns, and that's great. Like, I'm not going to make them think up something bad. But it's very easy and natural then when other people come over to do that. I did a podcast this past year with he's now an amazing young man in ministry, getting ready to be married. His dad was in missions and just super solid family, but this young man really went south. He really rebelled against the Lord. Actually, ended up becoming a heroin addict for a period of his life. But he was talking. I was asking him, like, what were some of the things that your parents did that helped keep that connection? And one of them he talked about was meals, and how it was always, we love the people that you love. And so anybody that you love is welcome to come to our house. And so he would bring his friends over. And one of the regular conversations around their table was just, what have you been learning? Like, what did you learn today? And so everybody have to go around. And he said his friends had never heard anything like that. And it was really strange to them. But they started, like, consciously trying to figure out they would learn. And so they would come the next time, like, ready and anticipating to be a part of the conversation. And he's like, it's funny because my friend who I hadn't seen for years ended up joining us for, a meal on a vacation, and we're talking, and then he pauses. He's like, "Wait a minute, aren't you going to ask me what I learned today?" Like, these things really do stand out to people, and they're very simple. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that you came up with a profound theological thought that's going to transform somebody. It's an intentional act of love goes a long way in these relationships. So, Abby, we've talked about developing for hospitality and getting your kids involved. What I would love is, what are some simple starters if somebody is not great at cooking, or not great at presentation? Do you have some just simple wins? What are some easy ones to throw out there for a particular occasion?
Yeah. One of the top recipes on my blog over at a tabletopaffair.com is the chicken and pesto dinner. And it takes about 20-25 minutes. It's one pot. You put it in the baking dish. So you put your chicken breast down, and then you top it with pesto. You top it with some diced tomatoes. If you're not a tomato person, forego the tomatoes, and then top that with mozzarella cheese and put it in the oven. And you have chicken pesto in
Wow.
20 minutes. And let me tell you, it is the tastiest thing ever. Pesto comes in a jar, so you don't have to make it. And it's already seasoned. So all of the olive oil and the seasonings with pesto really kind of meld together in the oven. It's so delightful. If you want to serve that with a fresh salad, grab a salad kit out of the produce department at your grocery store. You can also serve it with just some pasta. If you just want to boil some pasta, when it gets done, put a little pat of butter and a little bit of salt on that pasta and top your pasta with the chicken pesto, or just eat the chicken pesto with some fresh veggies on the side. I love my air fryer. I'm always doing on Instagram, I'm always doing air fryer tips and tricks. I love frozen okra is my favorite thing to do in the air fryer. I think it comes out so crispy and crunchy. It's amazing. You can also put pesto on fresh veggies like zucchini or squash and carrots, onions, anything like that, and roast those in the oven. So toss them in the pesto, roast them in the oven, and the olive oil from the pesto helps the veggies get nice and crispy, and then the seasoning in the pesto also seasons your veggies at the same time. And so pesto is something that I keep in my kitchen, in my pantry all the time because it's so versatile. But yeah, that air fryer really cuts down on time.
Yeah, we just got my mom. She moved to a smaller place and couldn't take it with her, and so we inherited. I got a bandsaw for my dad, and my wife got the air
Okay.
fryer for my mom. So it was a win-win on both occasions. We
Yeah.
cannot use the bandsaw for cooking so far. We haven't figured that out, but it works for
Okay.
other things. Hey,
Other things.
yeah,
Yes.
other things. The living table, you've arranged it in a really unique way, and one of the things that I love is you have a lot of conversation throughout the book where you kind of pull it back to the Lord and help talk people down off the ledge as far as over stressing about presentation, but also reminding them that it's the heart of Jesus that you're going for. But the other thing I love about it is it's not arranged in a like breakfast, lunch, dinner kind of way, but more in an occasion type of way. So, what was your mindset as you walked into that?
Yeah. I find that it is very overwhelming to go into a moment and look at a cookbook and say, okay, do I need an appetizer? Do I need a dessert? Do I need a main course? Like, what do I cook for this occasion? And so then people give up and they just go to Pinterest, and then they get overwhelmed because of the photography or the size, the amount of recipes that are out there on Pinterest. And so I wanted to not only inspire people with really easy recipes, but I wanted to inspire people with moments that they can have people over. A lot of times we just need inspiration. Like in the summer, I want people over, but do I just have them over for dinner on a Tuesday? No, have a summer movie night. Set up a screen outside. Or maybe it's a barbecue or a pool party. Maybe it's in the winter and you want to do a coffee date, or there's a whole chapter on service. And so it's the newborn meal train, the neighbors,
Mm.
that you take a meal to that might be new in your neighborhood. And so I wanted to not only inspire with recipes, but inspire by those everyday get-togethers that we can just serve and love people to help people kind of create that mindset of hospitality. So the book is broken up by tables. There are 6 tables that I feel like we see Jesus serve, or we see people serve through in scripture. So the table that celebrates and welcomes and serves. And so within those, I've then broken it up by occasion, but I thought it was super important that if we're going to talk about food, and we're going to talk about community, you can't leave out
Mm.
Jesus. He is kind of that thread that weaves those two together. And you would not, I mean, the book's only been out for a little bit, and the stories that I hear of people saying, wow, the recipes, yes, there's a picture for every recipe. So if you get kind of intimidated, you know what you're making. What the common thread that, or the theme that I'm hearing from people is, you're encouraging me that I don't just need to sit on the sidelines, that I need to be cooking, I need to be inviting people over. And even if that is just a simple coffee date and you just make coffee, that is so great. Invite people over. But that we don't need to wait for this perfect house or perfect table or perfect family,
I, I,
but
lo-
it needs to happen
I love
today.
that. So I have to tell you a table story. You can use this for your
Okay.
Instagram or blog or whatever you want.
Okay.
So a number of years ago, my son went through a 3.5 year journey with cancer and leukemia, and we were adopting out of the foster system at the same time. So we were completely overwhelmed, scattered in a bunch of directions. I had a handful of friends. All of these people, real sweet friends, really love Jesus. They got together, piled up money, and bought and built for us this beautiful dining room table out of cherry wood. And then,
Wow.
so they spent, I didn't know this because we were in and out of the hospital, but they would get together in the evenings, the guys would, and they would sand and sand and sand and plane this down, and then stained it and then built a bench to go along with it. Beautiful, beautiful table. But when they brought it to us on the underside, every family that had been involved in building it had taken a Sharpie marker and written encouraging Bible verses to us. And so we have, first off, this beginning of like every time we sit at this table, it reminds us of the love of our friends. But then we started a tradition that whenever we would have people over and host them, when the Lord would give us some kind of spiritually significant conversation, we would invite our friends and guests to crawl under our table and to sign their names on the bottom of our dining table and put
Oh, I
whatever they
love
want on
that.
there. And so now, you ever feel like, the Lord isn't using you or you're lonely or whatever, just, crawl under the dining room table and look up and you see this tapestry of how God has
That's
used that
awesome.
very spot in there. And there's this series we're talking about mission trips and service and all of these things, but there are few things more powerful than your table to reach not just your own family, but all of the people
Yeah.
that God brings into your life. So, hey, I want to thank you so much for joining, and I just want to ask: is there any
Yeah.
particular
It's
way
been
that
so
we can
fun.
pray for you as you continue in this ministry that you have?
Yeah, so my biggest prayer is that people would open the book and see
Mm,
Jesus, that they wouldn't be intimidated by food, but that the book would be kind of this instigator for relationships to be formed with Jesus. And that when people invite people into their home, that God would just be at that table. Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of the living table. That's the purpose of, I think, Jesus's ministry around a table, was that when he sat down with Zacchaeus, he was like, I don't care what you've done. I just want to be here and I want to love you. And so that if you pick up the living table, that is kind of the heart that you have. And that, it is inviting and opening to start these conversations about Jesus.
all right. Do you mind if we pray for you and we'll pray for those listening in the
Would love
process?
that.
Lord, I just thank you for this conversation and the encouragement of it, God. I think of how it encourages me to think back in my life how many significant moments have happened around a table. And also, God, for each of us as we look forward, how you're going to use our table and our tables to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to be the mouth of Jesus. And Lord, I pray for Abby that as she continues this ministry, that you would put her in front of the people that need to hear this message. And God, I pray as her book goes out, Father, that those who get it would not just use it as a beautiful display piece, but would see the heart of Jesus and see how they can be Jesus to their neighbors. Lord, we all want to be good moms and dads that make it easy for our kids to want to follow Jesus. But it can be overwhelming. We can feel stressed. We can feel pressured and pulled in so many different ways. And I pray that as the world and as even the things that we bring into our lives pull us in so many different directions, I do pray, Lord, that our table would be a magnet to draw us not just back together, but back to Jesus. And so that is our prayer. And we know that it can happen in your power as we walk in faith towards you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Friend, if you're still listening all the way to the credits, then I hope that means that this was a particular blessing to you to hear this podcast. If so, I want to encourage you to share it with somebody else that you think might be helped by it. You're welcome to go to letsparentonpurpose.com to find out more information about show notes, about past issues, all kinds of things to help your family. And I do want to say that Let's Parent on Purpose is a user-supported podcast. And if you would like to be a part of that, you can go to letsparentonpurpose.com, learn how to be a supporter through Patreon or through a one-time gift. Thank you so much for listening. Again, share this with somebody that you know needs to hear it. Remember that parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. And we'll talk to you soon.